I have this weird thing. Once I see something that I want and I see how it can impact me, my generation, and others, like there's no giving up. There's giving up and leaving it for later because there's obstacles. That is not in my dictionary, and I teach that to my children. And I think sometimes people are petty because they want to sit back and laugh and see how many times this lady have to send an email or come back. But what they fail to realize is once this lady get what she wants, she gets her freedom and she makes the money that she wants to make, and you're still where you are.
Welcome to the Share the Wealth Show, where minority professionals can learn to escape the racial wealth gap and catapult themselves into abundance. Your host, Nicole Pendergrass, grew her net worth from being negative to multiple six figures. Join her on her investigative mission to expose secret strategies of the wealthy so we can all have the tools needed to build the life and legacy we were created to possess. Now it's time for the show.
Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of the Share the Wealth Show. This is the show where we discuss strategies on how to build, grow, and protect minority wealth. I'm so glad that you're rejoining us again today. And what I want to talk about, we have a fantastic guest, Carline Cadet Francois. That is Francois, correct, right? Oh, yeah, my French is a little bit still on point. I did take French in high school and a little bit in college. But that was so many years ago that I try to pretend that I'm still a little French or have Francophile type of genes, but I don't. But your last name is Haitian then, right? Or
It's French, but you did very good.
okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. Um, all right. So this is a show. I already said that. Where we build, grow, and protect minority wealth. Today, guys, just bear with me. I've just got back from vacation and my brain is all over the place and I am getting it together, but the show must go on. And Caroline has such great information to share with you guys. That's why I'm super excited to have a talk with her today, because this is going to give you insight that a lot of you probably have not heard before, because I have never talked to someone who has been doing this strategy before. But yes, so let me look a little bit at your bio. I want to go too heavy into it because I know you're going to get into the details of that. But she's a first generation real estate investor and ALF mentor who empowers individuals to open and operate successful assisted living facilities. She's an owner and operator, and her expertise guides clients in creating profitable and desirable environments. So I also know, we'll talk about this later, you do have a book out on how to open up ALF. And I'm excited to talk about that a little bit at the end as a resource for people to tap into further after this conversation if they want to dig in. But okay, I'm jumping way ahead of myself because I want to ask you another question, but we'll save that for later. So tell me a little bit what you're doing now and why you decided to do ALF.
So, a little bit about me. I started in law enforcement like everybody else. My parents, teach us to go to school, be smart, be educated, and find a good pension job. And that's exactly what I did. I did very well at the Broward Sheriff's Office. When I decided to retire early, I was a sergeant, a supervisor. So, but then I realized I needed to do something else that would give me more flexibility to be mom in chief at home. So, I ended up, I'm a real estate investor. And so I had a property that I was going to put into the market as a rental property. And I decided to flip that property into an assisted living. And since leaving the sheriff's office, I've been managing my assisted living, teaching people how to open and writing books and doing all kind of good stuff. So that's all I'm doing now.
Okay, how long were working in the police department, the sheriff's office before you left?
So I was there for 10 years.
Oh,
Um, So, I did my due diligence. And while I was there, I think it was God that was leading me because
Mhm.
looking back, I didn't know anybody that wanted to do the things that I wanted to do. And I didn't know how to find the answers to these ideas in these questions that I had in my mind. I think it was God leading me on. And I started searching, Googling stuff and find YouTube, and all kind of resources came my way online. And then I started paying for coaching. Ultimately, I ended up using my W-2 income to help me buy multifamily income properties. And with that, and my husband is on board also as my support system. And so, I'm not taking all the credit. It's not just me, if anybody's listening to this out there. But using my W-2 income and having these income properties allowed me to retire early. And that's how I got into assisted living. My mom was already in the industry. She did that while I was in high school. When I was in college, that's all she did. And that's how the idea of assisted living came about. And I ended up opening one.
Nice. Okay. So I'm just trying to get some of the timeline here. You started leveraging, which is something I talk about frequently. Like, not everyone is meant to just jump out of their job immediately. And that's not also smart, really, unless you have that runway built up. But you started leveraging your W-2 income and putting that into investment properties while you were still working. So how many properties, you just say multifamily, how many properties or how many units do you have before you left your job?
3.
3. So 3 units?
3 properties.
Oh, 3
What?
properties. Okay.
Yes.
Are they all single? They're not all single.
2 singles and 1 multi.
Ah, okay,
Mhm.
okay. And so then before you left, you converted one to assisted living, or you converted it after you left?
So I started the process while I was still at the sheriff's office.
Okay.
And I left in December and got my official license in January following the next year.
Nice. So
Mhm.
which property did you convert to assisted living? All of them or just one?
1, a single family property.
Okay. So out of the 3 properties that you had, what made you decide to pick that particular property for the assisted living? Like, was it something structurally or layout wise that made that property ideal for assisted living? And yeah, what was that decision-making process?
So it was just so happened that that property was empty. I didn't have a tenant in it. And at the time, I wish I could say it was because I did so many research and find out that it was the area for it, but I didn't know what I was doing. And so, thank God, like I said, I believe God was leading me in the process because I did not research and find out that this was the area for assisted living or anything like that. The idea came, I know I wanted to do this. I have this property. It's fit for, what the inside should look like based on what I read from the policies and procedures of what assisted living should be. And then I went with that. I did all of the requirement, the conversions, generators, sprinkler system, worked with a whole bunch of contractors and different people from the city, zoning department. I made a whole lot of mistakes, but I learned so much. I learned so much, and it was frustrating and fun all at the same time. And that's how I ended up, having that particular building as the assisted living.
What I love about that whole story is just that you didn't know what you were doing. You made a lot of mistakes. You were frustrated, but you kept pushing forward, but you had that desire to make it work. And it wasn't even that you were strategic with picking the property. You had some income property and you're like, oh, this one's vacant. Let me just use this one. But things just worked out because you kept pushing forward. And that's what I want people to realize is that done is better than perfect. Just start taking the steps, even if you don't know what it looks like 3 miles down the road, you can't even get to 3 miles down the road unless you take the first step, unless you take the next step and the next step. So all of it is like progress and all the learning and mistakes. And I don't even call it, well, it is a mistake, but it's a learning lesson. Like you didn't lose because you didn't quit. You just kept pushing. And now you have a successfully operated assisted living facility. And now you're teaching other people because guess what? You've gone through a lot of mistakes that someone else who's new and not just getting started has not gone through, and they don't even know to ask. They don't even know to watch out for those types of mistakes. So I really love that. Looking to build wealth with real estate? Are you all tapped out on YouTube University and ready to get help tailored to your specific situation and goals? Have you always known that you are a little different from the crowd, that you never liked following the status quo, and that you're just tired of living in mediocrity? You want to build wealth on your own terms outside of Wall Street? Well, then maybe the Microfamily Mavericks mentorship program can help with that. It's a community where I handhold you through the process of buying your first small commercial multifamily building, because not everyone is ready for 100 units out the gate. Why multifamily? Because it gives your rental income a hedge against vacancy. Imagine what happens when your single family rental tenant leaves, right? And why commercial 5+ units? Because you have much more control over increasing the building's value in the commercial space, and then in turn, increasing your own net worth. Starting small is a stepping stone to so much more, because then you can tap that equity and buy another building and another and another, and you get the point. So increasing your cash flow and your ability to be job optional along the way. It's all a part of the journey. So if you think big, but you want to start small, and if you know multifamily real estate is a way for you to open the door to building a life of freedom, abundance, and legacy, but you just need someone to guide you step by step, and you want to be surrounded by other people on the same journey, doing the same thing, then just click the link in the show notes to find out a little bit more about the Microfamily Mavericks, and I look forward to potentially seeing you on the inside. So now back to the show. What's probably, I guess, the biggest not mistake, but the biggest hurdle that you had to overcome that maybe was from a lack of knowledge or know-how or foresight? What was one of the biggest things you encountered in this conversion?
I had plenty of them. The biggest one I would say was dealing with the zoning department. I didn't know that before I did anything, I needed to get approval. And based upon the approval, that determines which steps I take first. That's
Mm,
why today, when I tell my students, and I give them a sample letter of what they should write to the zoning department so they can get the language right. Because you know how the question you should ask is the one you didn't know to ask.
mhm,
Well, that
mhm.
happened to me a lot during that process. And people are either so disgruntled or just don't care that they know what you need to ask. But since you didn't ask for it, they're gonna
Oh
be
my
petty.
God. Yes.
They're gonna
It's
be
like,
petty and they're gonna delay you and until you get it right. Well, that's what happened to me.
oh my God. And that's just so true. That hit me hard because everyone who's in a government position or in a position at a certain facility or office or whatever that you need to interact with doesn't mean they know everything because they work there, and doesn't mean they're going to go above and beyond to tell you what you need before you kind of have to come back 50 times because you keep forgetting something, or not even forgetting, not realizing or not knowing that you needed something because they didn't tell you that when you went the first time. I think simple, super example that almost everyone has gone through is just going to the DMV. I feel like that's almost the same. Like you go, you read online documents and stuff you need, you bring what you want, what you need, or you think you need. Then they say, oh no, you're missing this. So, oh, now I have to go and have to wait in this whole long line again, do this whole process again. You go, you get the thing that they said they're missing and add it to the paperwork you already have. And you go back and somebody else says, oh no, you're supposed to have this one too, or this instead of that. And it's just like, why didn't someone tell me this the first time when I was just here? And how many times you have to go back through that process, coming back again and again. And some people just get frustrated. But if you didn't need to drive, then you would just leave it alone. But because most people need to get somewhere, a lot of people need to drive, you have to just go through that frustrating process. What made you not stop with all the back and forth I know you had with the departments and trying to figure out all the pieces? What was that driving force that made you keep pushing through?
I have this weird thing. Once I see something that I want and I see how it can impact me, my generation, and others, like there's no giving up. There's giving up and um, leaving it for later because there's obstacles. That is not in my dictionary, and I teach that to my children. And I think sometimes people people are petty because they want to sit back and laugh and see how many times this lady have to send an email or come back. But what they fail to realize is once this lady get what she wants, she gets her freedom and she makes the money that she wants to make, and you're still where you are. You know,
Mm,
that's the piggyback. And in my head, I laugh and I prepare myself to make 100 or 2,000 trips. But at the end of the day, I get the last laugh because I get what I need. I get what I want. So it's all about how you look at life and how you look at things.
okay.
Yes, it is
I
frustrating. I'm not going to
Yeah.
lie about that, but I don't let that deter me at all.
Yeah. And I think, you know what, even no matter what industry you decide to go with, what investment decision you try to make, what asset class you're in, there's always going to be these roadblocks and things that will test you in the journey. And that just is testing your resolve and
Mhm.
how far you want to go with this. And you know what I also think I jumped into without fully explaining? Can you explain what is residential assisted living? We just started having a conversation, and just in case someone out there doesn't understand or doesn't know what residential assisted living is, can you let us know what that is?
So, residential assisted living is pretty much a single family dwelling that is converted and is licensed as an assisted living. Compared to a larger assisted living, we're not allowed to have signs. So, we look like any other single family home down the street. There is no sign. There isn't anything that would indicate that this is an assisted living. It's just like every other house in the neighborhood. But we are licensed just like the big assisted livings. We
Mm,
are governed by the same state statutes. The same inspectors come to inspect, the big or small facilities. This is only the difference. And it residential assisted living provide a more one-on-one care type focused. We're able to cater more to your loved one if they need more assistance with activities of daily living. If they need help with feeding, eating, medications is a big one. We're more able to give the more one-on-one care type focus, whereas the bigger assisted living, they're more focused for people who are more active and they want to just enjoy life. They don't want the responsibilities of cooking and cleaning, and they want to have professionals to look over them, but they don't really need care per se. And they would go to a bigger assisted living, and their focus would be more on activities and things like that.
okay. So with assisted living, who is your tenant type?
My tenant type are elderly people who needs help. They either have, let's say, for example, dementia. They may have had a fall and they're not able to take care of themselves. They may have other issues like they can't do much for themselves. They need somebody to take them a bath. They need somebody to cook for them. They need somebody to remind them about their medications, someone to call the doctor for them. Whatever need that they have, we make sure we activate the proper resources because the doctors, the nurses, the podiatrists, the dietitian, everyone still comes in to provide the level of care that they need. And I don't have to pay those people. All I need to do is make sure that me and my staff alert these resources for our seniors when we see that they need it or the families see that they need it.
Okay.
Mhm.
So what I'm trying, I guess, to dig into then, you did say the larger residential assisted living is more focused on activities, and if someone's a little bit more mobile and can get about and wants to be active. What's the difference between that, what you're doing with a smaller residential assisted living, and like just a senior living facility? Like a gated community for seniors or something like that. So to me, in my brain, I'm thinking the gated community, like a senior living center, is more for people who are mobile and don't need help. And I didn't realize the larger assisted living facilities actually focus more on the activity and less on the assistance. Is that what it is?
They provide the assistance, but they go by phases. Like let's say if my mom came in, she was able to move around, she was able to feed herself. All she needed was someone to help her with her medication, right? That's her primary need.
Mm-hmm.
And now she fell while she's there. This is common. While she's at this larger facility, she fell and broke her hip. She goes to rehab, and doctors say she can go back to assisted living. She goes back to this bigger ALF, and now she needs more help than what she initially came in needing. So
Mm-hmm.
now she would have to either go to a nursing home, downgrade to a smaller ALF because we have less people and we're able to provide more one-on-one care. Or the family members can decide, let me bring a private caregiver to sit with mom at that bigger ALF, but they'll be paying twice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much the big difference really. At a smaller setting, we still have activities, we still have different things that they do, but we are able to provide a focused type care because of our size. We're
Okay.
smaller, and so with smaller comes more one-on-one focus. So compared to like a senior center, um, we're not really in the same realm because senior centers are not licensed under the same umbrellas that we're licensed as assisted living. There's a set of rules that we have to obey. Like we have to have doctors that comes in to see them, whether big or small. We have to have a dietitian that determines what they should eat, whether big or small. We have to have medication management, education, whether big or small. The only difference is the bigger the ALF, the more residents they have, the less they're able to focus on more one-on-one care. And the
Mm-hmm.
smaller the ALF, the more we're able to focus on one-on-one care.
Okay, perfect. Now that seems like, tell me I was gonna say that seems like just a lot more work, right? So there has to be that passion. I understand you said your passion and why you wanted to do this, but to me, I also want to see like what's the anatomy of what a ALF business is like. So there is the business and then the property, are those combined? Do you have to have one to have the other? Like, how does that work? How does your staffing work? How does, you said me and my staff had to make sure that the doctors and stuff are notified. Like, how do you coordinate just the running of it? What's the typical day in the life of someone working at an ALF? And what does that business structure look from a high level as far as like the business and the property and how that, can people do one without the other, or they have to have both, or explain all of that for someone who's looking to get into ALF or interested at least in the idea what they should expect.
That's a great question. So for me, a day to day, I manage, meaning I hire the staff to work. I'm in direct contact with residents' families. I find residents. I'm in direct contact with the licensing authorities, the people that come in to do inspections to make sure that we abide by policies and procedures. I'm in direct contact with those people. And so I manage the staff. I don't do the caregiving per se. Not to say if I show up and I see a resident needs something and my staff is helping someone, I'm going to stand back and say, oh, I don't do that. No, I put my hands when I need to, but on a day to day, I do not manage. I handle the phone calls. I make sure the files are in order. I make sure inspections are being completed on a timely manner and that we do what's necessary. One of my pet peeves is cleanliness. Like at my facility, the tile is white and it has to be clean. It has to smell good. And I make sure all these things are in order and I manage, right? I manage. And
Mhm.
so the structure in the day to day for a caregiver and someone who is like myself, the administrator and manager is different because most of this thing I can do from home. I don't have to be at the facility to find out how, someone's mom is doing. I can look at the camera, I can call my staff, they keep me up to date. So I go to the facility as necessary. And so I still have the freedom of time while I'm managing my facility, making sure everything is how it's supposed to be. And also too, Nicole, the family members, they visit, their friends, they visit. So if someone is not doing what they're supposed to do, there's so many different people walking in to make sure that the place is running in an orderly fashion. So it sounds like a lot, and it is, but once you understand and you've already put things in place once and correctly, it pretty much manages itself.
Okay. Um, how do you find the right staff? Like how many bedrooms and how many like residents do you have at your property? And how many staff do you need to support that number of residents? Like is there a standard number of, staff per resident?
Right. So for me, I have a single family home and I keep it like a typical size of a family. So we are licensed for 4 residents. So we do four private pay residents, meaning this room is bringing me a X amount of money, whether I put 2 people in it or 1 person in it. And I have two
Oh,
staff. So I
okay.
have the caregiver, and then I have someone else to kind of like look over and assist as necessary. And that someone is able to go shopping for me, able to answer emails, able to, send a fax or reach out to the pharmacy. I train them to where if I don't want to do certain things, they get to do it. But certain things, as the administrator, I must do. So
Okay.
some of it is, I'm able to delegate. Most of it, I'm able to do myself from home, and then I just visit the facility on a daily as I see fit.
Okay. So then you have two employees for the 4 residents, and you decide to keep your rooms as private suites, I guess just for a residents type of like self, I don't know,
Privacy,
self-realization or yeah,
yeah.
and just privacy and things like that.
And a lot
And
of it is based on what the families want. They
okay.
come in seeking a private room for their loved one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Most people, I guess, would want a private room. So with private, I know you said you get the same amount of money for a private room as you do for if you put 2 people in the room. So that's, I know, probably counterintuitive to what a lot of people would think. Like if there's a certain, I understand if like there's a certain size room, or the room would have to be a certain size to even be able to put 2 residents in a room. But why is it per room and not per resident, the payment structure, if each resident has their own payment kind of system?
Right. So you are correct. All the rooms, the square footage of the home, all of that is determined by the licensing authority, which in
Okay.
Florida it is ACA. The reason you want to have a per room charge for your facility is because you need to have a certain net operating income to be able to run a smooth operation. And you can't pinpoint, oh, this person is nice, I'm going to charge them X. This person may not seem nice, I'm going to charge. It makes everything equal. This is how much I charge. Every person that is in the facility is paying the same fees. And so it makes it fair and it makes it equal. And I don't have to pinpoint who I'm going to charge more or less.
Okay. Are you enjoying this episode? Then stop what you're doing right now. Head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It really helps our show get pushed to more people who are looking for the information that we're sharing here. We have to share the wealth. If you listen to us on YouTube, make sure you like the episode that you're listening to right now and subscribe to our channel. Then share the channel with somebody else. There are people out there looking for the information you're listening to right now. So make sure you share it with someone who you know needs it. Now, back to the show. Okay. Um, because I have so many questions going in my head right now, and I'm just wondering where to go. So, all right, this is the Share the Wealth show, right? So let's talk about the money. It's all good. We do these like entrepreneurial investing activities, and a lot of times we do have a strong why that is philanthropic, or not philanthropic, it's not the right word because it's for profit, but it is to give back, but to give and to receive. Like, it's for us to elevate, for us to have time freedom, location freedom, be able to step away from our jobs. We wouldn't be able to do that without an appropriate amount of income for the services that we are providing. So, and you don't have to say your income particularly, but for a general, like a 4 resident type of single family home, can you give an example of what the net operating income, or actually even the revenue and then the NOI would be on the property? And just for people listening, the revenue is just all the income that's coming in, all of the payments from the 4 residents. And the net operating income is once you subtract out all of the expenses. So that's a different way to say, like, what's your top line, and then what's, and then NOI is not really bottom line because you don't include the mortgage payment, but it's a better gauge of what you can be taking away. So yeah, it's a long question, but yeah, what is in general, what should people expect as far as income comparatively, especially to a long-term regular rental, which is what most people know?
So I will say like this, because I've had, for example, some of my students, once you give them a number, they hold on to that. I will say, if you start an assisted living per room right now in Florida, that room should be making you around $6,500 at the lowest per month, and up to $8,000 at the highest per month. Now, depending on your facility and where you're located and how you structure your show, you can even have it a little higher than that. But this is the average. So imagine if you have 4 rooms, that's how much you're making. Now, keep in mind, some of the money that you're making, your biggest expense is your staff. And so being able, like say me, for example, I could have made more if I decided to be a caregiver, but I value my time more and I have other income streams. And so to me, time is more important to me. So I choose to pay my staff and get what I get after my expenses. So there are also a lot of little things that will take away some of, the expenses you have to pay for inspections, liability insurance, and all of those things. But at the end of the day, if a room is giving you, let's say, 6,500 at the lowest, 7,000 is ideal. Whether you put 2 people or 1 person, you do the math. If zoning tells you in a residential area you can have 12 people, you can have 6 people, you can have 8 people. So you do the math, and then you get to see how much you will be able to make. I also have a guide on my website, carlinecadetfrancois.com. It answers a lot of these questions, and it gives you an idea of, what you should look into, what you can consider, things you probably never thought about. And for me, it is more of a giving back, like you said, but being able to maintain my freedom. I love our seniors. I love the fact that they paved the way. Even someone like me, I came from deep poverty. Up until today, I'm still, the first in the family, will not be the last, because there are others coming like me, and they are tigers. They about to go get it. And, it's like you have choices. And I have a lot of caregivers that wants to open assisted living, but then they don't have enough income. So I say to them, why don't you joint venture with another caregiver, team up, put your money together, and perhaps you can work there. Now you created your own income with all these job losses that's going on. At least your job is secure pretty much. All you need to do is find residents, which is not hard. You could go to the churches. I give ideas and tips on that guide also of how you can find residents, go to the churches, work with placement agents, how you find staff. You go on Indeed, you go to the churches, you let people know what you do and why you do it, and you'll find the resources that you need.
Okay. So that's perfect. Wow. 65. Okay. So if 6,500 is the low end for what you can potentially get per room, at least in Florida, and it might be different in other areas, but just as an average, if that's the revenue, do you know what the NOI would be per room on average? If you're getting 65 in revenue, what would be your, after expenses, what would you take home?
I never actually look at it per room,
Okay.
but you pay your staff on average, let's say $15 an hour,
Okay.
and your liability insurance, depending on where you are, it would range on based on your area. And then you have your inspection that costs a little less. So it depends from person to person, pretty much.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I tell people to be completely specific. I tell people, before you open up a ALF, find out how many people, how many residents you can have in that ALF. Call a insurance provider, and I provide some of those resources. Ask them for that area, how much do you charge? And then you would have already know how much you can charge per room, and then how much you can charge for, you will pay a staff, and then based on that you determine your NOI from there, because it will
Okay.
depend from person to person and area to area,
Area to
if
area.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I'm just trying to also just give people a super, super rough estimate. And guys, this is not for you to take this to the bank and be like, well, I know I'm supposed to make this much if I do ALF. No, this is just
No,
a general. But like if they were looking at a property and before they made any phone calls, if they did a 50% expense ratio, would that be too much?
there would be a little less than that,
Okay.
but like I said, it depends on the area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get that. I get that. So I'm gonna say, but do between 30 and 40%. No, and then dig in further. But at least that gives you kind of a rough guideline to be conservative. You can go a little bit higher on the expense ratio. But okay, so that's really such great information. Now, what is your next step? Like where do you plan on doing this and growing? Because I'm really trying to find resources and ideas for increasing income and increasing impact for people who want to buy property, especially multifamily. Is this something that you can do in multifamily instead of just a single family house? Let's say you had a 3 or a 4 unit property. Would you be able to do ALF in the whole building, even though they're separate kind of units?
That's a great question. And I want to piggyback before I get to this question,
Yeah.
Nicole,
Yeah.
on the expense ratio. Let's say if someone were to say, I'm gonna pick up a full-time shift and work at my AL, your expense ratio just pretty much.
Completely drops. Yeah,
So
yeah,
you can play with that, and that's one of the reasons why I try not to say a number, because people remember that number. But yeah, it doesn't have to be residential for some of it. Like if you find a duplex that is within a commercial area that will give you like 20 people, for example, it's still a small enough size to where
Mhm.
you're gonna have to put more than two staff, but then you have a bigger income that you can work with. A duplex or triplex, fourplex, you can play with those. And also, if you have a duplex in a residential area, you can still do the same thing. Um, it's just reaching out to City Hall and find out if you're allowed to be there as a residential assisted living or a commercial assisted living. 15 or more would put you in that commercial realm. And
Okay.
once you find out if you're allowed to be there, then you begin your process. But your first step is finding out. Let's say you have the duplex. You send my zoning request letter. I have one. If they go on my website, they can get that. And you email the template and you find out if you're allowed to have it there. They're going to tell you yes or no and how many people you're allowed to have. Let's say you don't have anything at all. You're thinking about buying a home or a duplex to start an assisted living. Well, you find a property, and you submit your offer. While you're waiting on your offer, send out the email and find out if you're zoned for assisted living and for how many. And based on that answer, you can, decide if you should proceed or not. If you get a no, perhaps if you choose to proceed, you will go and rent that out. If you get a yes, you'll proceed with assisted living. For me, the next phase is to, like I remember telling you over the phone when we had a conversation that I started investing in multi family as a passive investor. Ultimately, I want to be able to have more choices now that I have more time and time to educate, time to network, and different opportunities come my way. I want to help people open as many good assisted living as possible. I think I have always been in real estate without knowing because I always had an itch for it. I always wanted to be involved in real estate. And now that I have more time and more freedom, I'm able to tap into more of it. So, yeah, the
Nice.
next phase for me is pretty much teaching and investing and helping others invest in real estate, however means that I can.
Nice. Oh, so you're not looking to open up another assisted living of your own, but help students to be able to expand assisted living opportunities.
Well, I don't want to say yes or no. I think
Okay.
if I find the right assisted living, the right area, now that I know what I know, the possibility is there that I could decide to open one. But what I would do is replace myself with,
Mhm.
completely, and I can be as passive as possible.
Okay. Now, on that note, actually, for people who are interested in this model but don't want to run the business, is there a way to be involved if you, let's say you own a property? Can they find someone like you who has the business and how can they get more than what, you would normally get from a long-term tenant if they were renting their entire building maybe to someone who has an AFL business?
So they could, if they decided that they want to be passive, they can join someone like myself who wants to be active in it,
Mhm.
and then they get a percentage of their money, or they can decide to do flips. Like, say, for example, I decided right now, I'm going to do all this, and then I want to sell it to someone already as a business. So now I have this building, the value of the building go up, and now I built a business. It's a successful business. It's bringing revenues. It's taking care of itself, and now I can then sell this business, sell this um, property, and now I have all this income to play with. That's another way that they can look at it, or they can choose to rent it out to someone. Like I might not want to be involved anymore. And I decided I'm going to rent the business to another administrator. And they come in and they're paying me a percentage for the piece of real estate and for renting the business from me. But they don't
Oh,
necessarily own the business, but for a family member coming in, they wouldn't know that this is not their business.
wow. So renting the building to me makes sense. I've heard of that. And even like doing a triple net lease kind of thing where you rent the building and you take care of the taxes and the insurance and all the other stuff. So I understand that concept, but I've never heard the concept of actually renting the business because for those of you listening, um, the assisted living business is separate than the real estate. They can be separated, they can be together if you own the real estate and you own the business that's within it. So if you're renting the real estate, now you can rent the business as well, even though you don't have ownership, but you just like basically triple net lease the business and the real estate together. So
So
as an owner, if I'm the one who started it, I can step away and be passive and now just get paid a percentage like of my ownership fee, or they pay whoever's renting it from me pays a flat fee and they can keep whatever on top of that kind of thing. But I still bake in my profit into that flat fee that I'm charging them.
yes, because they're still paying you for the real estate and they're paying you for the business in that one fee that you're getting. Because
Oh,
remember, you made a lot of expenses to get this business going.
yeah.
So they're paying you for the real estate and they're paying you for the business also.
Okay. Wow, that's a whole other concept that I didn't even think about.
Okay, guys, don't kill me, but I'm going to have to cut this episode short. This is too juicy, and we need to do this in a part 2. So stay tuned for the next episode that airs, and you can hear the rest of our conversation.
Did you love this episode of Share the Wealth Show? Be sure to connect with Nicole by following her on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. If you picked up any of the gems that were dropped by today's guest, make sure you not only put them in your bag, but if you know of someone who would benefit from this information, don't keep it to yourself. Share the wealth and make sure to leave us a rating and review. We'll see you for next week's episode. Subscribe so you'll be notified.